You know, when it comes to knowing the time of the Lord's return, it's important to understand that we have a lot of ideas that we inherited from the past. Do they stand the test of time? I don't think so. And rather than just parrot what we've heard in the past with very little understanding on our part, maybe it's time to take another fresh look at many of these things, particularly in the area of Jesus' Olivet Discourse, as it pertains to his coming, and more specifically, how much we can and cannot know. And the reason is this: we have been taught that we're not supposed to know anything, that he's coming to the utter and complete surprise of everyone, including watchful believers. I think that was popular because we were endeavoring to keep, sustain, defend a coming that could happen at any moment. We cherished that because if you don't have any signs and it can happen at any moment, then it's not what we would call a post-tribulation rapture, where we end up having to go through everything that the scripture tells us really we don't have to. In any case, now that we have a better understanding of the scenario of end-time events, because we've begun to rebuild the prophetic puzzle around the day of the Lord, 1,000-year day, and this great week, which we see throughout the scriptures from cover to cover, basically. At the same time, the great week, with Jesus telling us when he's coming back at the start of this last day, or the third day, if you will, from counting from his ministry, that throws a monkey wrench in our old understanding of the Olivet Discourse, because it means that we can know the approximate time of his return. Again, no one's interested in setting a specific calendar date. We don't need to. And so an approximate time, like a pregnant woman who knows the general length of her pregnancy and can see the signs, is not obsessed with a specific date or time on the clock. That's pretty much irrelevant. And that's where we're at with our end time awareness. However, this understanding or revelation of the great week means that we have to go back and untangle, or perhaps I should say, understand more accurately what Jesus was teaching in his Olivet Discourse, so that we can reconcile all of these thoughts, these revelations, because we know that the Bible cannot contradict itself. So what was Jesus teaching? Why did he say the things he said to his disciples? Why did he bring up this unknown day and hour, which we now understand relates to future eternity? We call it forever or eternity, and they called it the eternal day, because it pertains to eternity. No one can understand or know what that day will be like. It's be like saying, do you know what forever will be like? What we'll be doing? So now we can understand he was not talking about the day and hour when he comes back for his bride, but he was contrasting this unknown day of eternity with the days of Noah, because the days of Noah were an example of an event, a prophetic event. In their case, the flood. In ours, his coming. The flood was an event that they not only knew would come someday, but eventually they knew exactly when it was coming. They knew it would come in their lifetime. They knew when it was just 7 days away. So Jesus said his coming would be like the days of Noah. And rather than just dwell on one side of the coin, the fact that the flood surprised all of the unbelievers, so that surprise becomes the emphatic symbol of the days of Noah, you have to flip the coin over and realize that it was not so for the righteous. The righteous were not surprised. They were well informed. And so if his coming is as it was in the days of Noah, most certainly those who do not believe in Messiah's return will be surprised. But we have to also realize that his statement applies to the righteous, those who are looking for his coming, those who are eagerly looking for his coming. You know, the element of surprise is never used of watchful believers, only of the unbelieving. So we're looking again at Jesus' statements, because even with our faulty understanding in the past, we still had contradictions that didn't make sense. For instance, why would you say no one can know the day and hour of your coming when you then told us to learn a lesson from the parable of the fig tree, which says that if we will watch the signs, we can know when his coming is near, even at the door? Since that is the case, how then could you say to our generation, I'm coming at an hour you are not expecting? Oh, see how crazy that sounds? You'd say, wait a minute. You just told me I could know when it's near, even at the door, but yet it's going to be at a time I'm not expecting? Are you confused, or am I confused? Obviously, God's not confused. Jesus knew exactly what he was doing, and let me propose that this is what he had in mind with his Olivet discourse. Remember, this was days before the cross. They could barely grasp that he was leaving, let alone the circumstances under which he would be leaving, let alone when and how he would even come back. These were totally new concepts. They were still thinking that he had come to be a military commander and fight the Romans. So when they started asking him about how he would return and the signs of this age and when all of these things would happen, he could only tell them so much because of the circumstances. They could not bear or understand much at that time, which is why he had to promise the Holy Spirit to come and finish the work. But look at it this way. Jesus knew when he would return. He knew the revelation of the great week. It was why he made that cryptic prophecy to Herod, that fox, that he would cast out devils and perform cures for a today and a tomorrow, prophetically speaking. And that on the third day, or 3,000 years from then, he and his body would be complete. It's why he identified the last day with resurrection, those who would believe on him. Now, if you don't understand the great week and all of these references and how often and how freely they referred to it, these things will just fly over your head and you'll have no idea that this was even happening, that he was even revealing these things. So look at it this way. He knew the great week. He knew when he was coming back. The idea that Jesus didn't know and still doesn't know when he's coming back is just ridiculous. His disciples, on the other hand, had no idea. They were looking for a soon coming kingdom, not a late returning Messiah. I'm going to say that again because this is important to understanding the Olivet Discourse. At that time, before the cross, his disciples, even contemplating that he was leaving, were looking for a soon coming kingdom. The idea of a late returning Messiah 2,000 years later never crossed their minds. Why not? Because they had not yet seen the great week. And so his objective in this teaching, to get them started on the journey, if you will, of discovery, so that the Holy Spirit could lead them into the revelation of the great week. You know, the 4 days of the Old Testament, and then the 2 days for the church age, and then the 7th or last day of his our rule and reign together. That all had to come and had to be carefully laid out for the disciples. There was way too much information to just dump it on them at the time. And they would need to see everything. They would need to see the whole picture, the big revelation from start to finish, and become familiar with all of the different terms, such as, you know, the day of the Lord and the last day and the 3 days and the 7th day and the end of the days and so forth, and the day of eternity. These were all concepts that were relatively unknown to them, but fully known to the Messiah. So one of his strategies was to get them thinking that they could know if they would watch, if they would, and what do we mean by that? If they would watch? Well, if they would study, if they would stay observant, if they would be attentive. And that's why Peter said, do not forget this one thing if you think the Lord's return is tardy. Do not forget means, oh, I knew that, but I forgot. No, in the Greek, it means do not let this one thing, this one truth escape your notice. Don't fail to investigate this one revelation, because it is the key to knowing when he's coming back. It is the key to understanding the whole plan of God from start to finish. The 6 days, the 7th day, and then the unknown day of perpetuity after the week is over, after you've come to, as Daniel called it, the end of the days, the prophetic 1,000-year days. So one of his objectives was to get them to understand that at the time they did not know when he was coming back, which was a true statement. But at the same time, to give them the hope and the realization that they could know if they would watch, if they would study and stay attentive. So to accomplish this, Jesus used 2 Greek words that unfortunately in our language translate out to the same word. And these 2 words are Oida and then Gnosco. So 2 Greek words, Oida, and then the other is Gnosco. But unfortunately in our language, when we see it translated, it comes out one or the same word, to understand or to know. But Jesus deliberately used these 2 different words that have 2 different meanings in his teaching in the Olivet Discourse, so that in effect we don't hear what they heard, because our language doesn't differentiate as well as theirs did. So let me give you an example of what I'm talking about, because this will straighten out a lot of misunderstanding. We've thought in the past that the unknown day and hour had to do with Jesus' return, so therefore no one could know. We didn't realize that's not what he was talking about at all. He was just contrasting eternity future with the days of Noah, as if to say, I know there's things that right now you don't know. Just like right now we don't know future eternity. We can't see that far ahead. But my return will not be like that. It's something that you can know. It's something that you can know just like Noah knew a prophetic event that was coming in his lifetime, the flood, and he knew and was aware of the approximate timing of it as well. That's what my return will be like. That's what the righteous can expect when I come back, to be like Noah, to know like Noah. So that resolves, hopefully, that question. But then there's another question in this same Olivet discourse, and this is where Jesus made these statements. In Matthew 24:42, he said, "Watch therefore, for you do not know what hour your Lord is coming." Now think of that statement in terms of what I was just saying about what the disciples knew and didn't know, and what Jesus was trying to accomplish, to get them to see that there was something more to see that they had not seen yet. So to do that, as I said, he used the two Greek words oida and gnosco. And to best illustrate what that means or how this works, we can look at John 13:6-7. So bear with me. You have to apply yourself a little bit to this. I know you can do it. Our generation, maybe we got used and comfortable to just being parrots, and it was so easy to just recite and repeat what we had heard and other generations had passed on to us. And so that's where we were. But I'm challenging you in this hour, at those of us who are alive at the end of this age, to shake off that slumber, to realize that the cage door is open. You don't have to be a parrot. You can get out of the cage and realize who you really are. You really are an eagle, and you were destined. You were created. You were ordained in this hour, not to spend the days that remain in a confined cage where there's nothing new, but to break out and soar up into the heavenly realms and see things that we were meant to see, but from an entirely new perspective than from that cage. Okay? So here's a challenge to just take your heart can understand this, but just apply yourself. So here's the foot washing incident between Jesus and Peter. You all know it. When Jesus girded himself with a towel and began to wash his disciples' feet, and Peter protested and said, "Lord, you're washing my feet? I should be washing yours," or something like that. And so in John 13:6-7, here's the incident, and Peter said, "Lord, you're washing my feet?" And Jesus responded with this: "What I am doing, you do not understand now." Oida. What I'm doing, you don't know or understand right now. But you will know, Gnosco, and you will come to understand after this. So there's the two Greek words and the interplay between them. What I'm doing right now, you don't know. You don't understand. You presently do not yet know what I'm doing. That's what oida means. Gnosco has to do with the future and how you can learn or you can know if you will study, investigate, observe, even through experience. So the critical thing to see here is that at that moment, Peter did not understand. He did not know what this was all about, why Jesus was doing this. But, and this is a big but, pardon the pun, but for our generation, this is a big but. It did not mean that Peter could never know or understand the foot washing. Apply that to these statements here that Jesus was using to get his disciples to see that there was something they had not yet understood, the great week, and how that would help them to understand and know like a Noah. So oida is a word that's it's used in the perfect past tense, if you like to get scholarly about it. What's that mean? The perfect past tense. Well, it simply just means that it has to do with the past, which has an effect on this present moment. The past can't be changed. Can't go back and change it. So in the past, all of your life up until now, there's something you have not seen. There's something you have not understood, and therefore, as of this present moment, you don't know. That's oida. That's all it means. So in contrast, Gnosco is a word that you would use in the parable, if you were Jesus, about the fig tree, because it has to do with the future, with knowledge that can be gained, even if at that moment before you did not know. In other words, if you watch, if you investigate, study, stay alert and attentive, you can know. So in the fig tree parable, Jesus said, when its branch has already become tender and puts forth leaves, you gnosco, you know or learn that summer is near. So you also, when you see all these things, gnosco, or know that it is near, even at the doors. So in other words, he's telling them, when it comes to my coming in the future, if you will study, if you will watch, you can know. But with oida, he was convincing them that as of their moment, their time together, their just prior to the cross, there were some things they did not yet know. And that's what oida means. You do not yet know. So now read the statements of Jesus with that understanding. For instance, Matthew 24:42. Watch therefore, for you do not oida what hour your Lord is coming. In other words, if we translate it like it was translated in the foot washing, where he said, right now, you do not yet know, or you don't understand right now what I'm doing. So if we translate it here in Matthew, we could say, watch therefore, for you do not yet know, or you do not understand right now what hour your Lord is coming. You see the difference? And that was true. They didn't. They were looking for a kingdom that was about to come. In fact, even after his resurrection, just as he was getting ready to ascend, they approached him again and they said, Lord, at this time, are you going to finally restore the kingdom to Israel? Now is it time? You see, they did not yet know or comprehend this whole deal with the great week, that there would be a today and a tomorrow, a prophetic messianic ministry by the church before we get to that point where it's time to deal with the Gentile nations and exchange the kingdoms so that they become his kingdom on the earth. That's why I said right now, my kingdom is invisible. It's not time yet for that aspect of it. For if it were, then my servants would fight. But we're not here to fight right now. We're here to preach the gospel, the ministry of reconciliation. So, again, Matthew 25:13 is the same thought. Watch therefore, for you know neither the day nor the hour in which the Son of Man is coming. Does that mean you can never know? Does that mean you can't know? That believers in the future can't know? Or was he telling them they did not know at the time? Well, what word did he use? If we were to use something like Gnosco, that would mean that you can't ever know. You can't ever learn it. But that's not the message of his teaching. His message was just the opposite. If you pay attention, you can learn, even at the doors. So Matthew 25:13, watch therefore, for you, Oida, you do not, Oida, the day or the hour. You do not yet know. Now, to prove this out, for those of you who like, to get into the nitty-gritty details, right into the weeds of all of this, here's Young's literal translation. Young was a Hebrew and Greek scholar, and his translation brings out what some of our English translations don't bother to take the time to do. And so his is accurate. So his says in Matthew 24:42, watch ye therefore, because you have not known in what hour your Lord doth come. In Matthew 25:13, watch therefore, for you have not known the day nor the hour in which the Son of Man doth come. Notice how he put it in the past tense, because he understood Oida. Oida means you have not up until this present moment understood or known or seen it. And Oida comes from the root word which means to see. So it's like, do you see this? It's either a yes or no question, and it applies to this moment because of the past. Have you understood this yet? No. Okay, then you don't Oida. Does that mean you can never understand it? No. Oida never restricts you from knowledge in the future. So if you get the heart of this, what I'm trying to say is I think we have misunderstood what Jesus was teaching in this, what we call Olivet Discourse. I think instead of saying we can't know, we can never know, we'll all be surprised, he was teaching just the opposite, that if we pay attention, if we watch, if we study and investigate, we can know, like Noah. That's the main message, and he wanted us especially to see the great week.